Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm really excited to have Dr. Erika Woolsey here with us today. I met Erika last summer at Explorers Festival at National Geographic. We both gave 3-minute lightning talks that were back to back, and we spoke before Sylvia Earle. So I had this very surreal afternoon hanging out and rehearsing with Erika and eating snacks with Sylvia. And I have no idea what Erika said because I was too nervous about my own talk. But we've kept in touch, and I've learned more and more about the work that she's doing. So I'm really excited that she was available to come down today. Erika is the CEO and co-founder of the Hydrous. So if you came early, you were watching a VR dive video created by her organization. And I think we have some time after if you didn't get a chance to do that. A little bit about her background. She did her bachelor's degree in biology and art history from Duke University, and then she spent 7 years in Australia researching the Great Barrier Reef. So she did her master's degree and PhD in Australia. When she's not busy with the Hydrous, she's also an ocean design fellow at Stanford University. So welcome, Erika.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm here with Andrea Contreras, who is helping out with VR. She's working on her marine science degree. Is that what you'd put? How do you put it? At Stanford, and she's also interested in how VR works for ocean education. So, as Caitlin mentioned, I am a co-founder and I run an organization called the Hydrous. We're a nonprofit, and we're basically devoted to ocean education, especially using emerging technologies. And so, we like to call what we're trying to create open access oceans because we recognize this unfortunate disconnection between science and public understanding, which I'm sure you all have observed as well. And so when we founded this organization, we wanted to really bring more of a human side to marine science and try to find ways to connect more people with beautiful and threatened ocean environments. And one of the things we started doing is on our citizen science expeditions, we started taking 360 photospheres. So this is in the Maldives shortly after a mass bleaching event. So this was in 2016. And we posted these photospheres online, and you could just view them on your phone in a cardboard headset. And we saw them get millions of views on just like the Street View platform. And this is the exact same methodology used by the Catlin Sea View Survey and the Ocean Agency, if any of you have seen Chasing Coral by any chance. And what we're really interested in is why do people really are drawn to that? And for me, I've been talking about coral reefs and climate change for a long time, but it wasn't until I had this object to show. We also create 3D models of coral reefs using photogrammetry that's non-destructive. And having these props and having this kind of viewer and a way to connect people to the places you're talking about, it just like, to me, just was a game changer. I had never seen that level of curiosity and interest, and it would be followed by better conversations than I had ever had before. So intuitively, I really thought that there was something to this. And in my research, I started learning about all of the kind of early observations about the power of VR. One of the areas that I was looking at was the MIT VR lab, the Stanford Virtual Human Interaction Lab. And it seems as though the effects of these immersive virtual environments are really promising for generating empathy, as well as towards helping people understand really complex scientific issues and helping abstract ideas become a little bit more visible and concrete. So I was really interested in how you could use this tool to communicate about oceans, which very few people get to visit, and climate change, which doesn't feel real to a lot of people on Earth. So with the Hydrous, I started researching the best methods to go about this and raising funds and assembling a team. And I found this amazing camera called the Virtual 2. And so what you're seeing on the end here is a housing that's covering 13 Blackmagic cameras. So it shoots really quality footage. And they're mounted in pairs. So we were producing stereoscopic footage, meaning you're creating the illusion of depth in 3D, because what you're seeing in your left eye is slightly different than what you're seeing in your right eye. And that's why they're paired together like that. And it was kind of a beast. Luckily, one of our Hydrous team members is a very experienced diver. He also lived and worked in Palau, where we collected a lot of our footage for a number of years. So he was just the perfect person to do it. His name is Rick Miskiv. And around this time, because we were interested in emerging tech, a lot of tech companies were interested in what the Hydrous was doing, and so they created a VR experience for us using the 3D models we collected all over the world, and allowing you to interact, move things around, and even take pictures, using a 3D model of the camera rig we would actually use for our underwater photogrammetry. And then the photos would be emailed to you, which was pretty fun. And so I attended a conference in Las Vegas for Autodesk, and because Autodesk has provided the software that we use to create our 3D models, and they were also an early supporter of the Hydrous. And so it's very strange for me being used to science conferences, going to a tech conference in Las Vegas and showing VR and being a part of that. And I was amazed at just the line of people that wanted to go in this VR experience. Their whole marketing team could not get as many emails as this experience got through people wanting to get their own pictures back. So it was a really great way for the industry to connect with potential clients. And it also connected me to someone named Jason McGuigan, who was the person demonstrating the VR in that video, and he is the director and one of the producers for this film that we've made, which we call Immersion. And through post-production, we realized that it was a story about science, love, and magic in the ocean. And those are my 3 favorite things. And so it's been really fun using this tool to try to bring the ocean to everybody. I know for me, being a marine scientist, being a dive master, being a kayak guide, one of my favorite things to do in the world is introduce people to the ocean and get as many people into the ocean as you can. And I think that's also very important. Not only is it fun and wondrous, it's also really important when it comes to conservation and also scientific understanding. So I can't clone myself. We can't clone ourselves. We can't bring everyone to the ocean, but we can start using scalable technologies to bring the ocean to everyone. So that's why I'm really excited about what VR can do. And so a lot of our footage was collected in Palau, but we had our opening scene at the California Academy of Sciences, where I'm a volunteer diver. So we got special permission to dive in there, which was amazing. And I'll show you a few scenes, and these are really rough cuts. What you're going to see in the headset is a lot finer. And so it's basically I'm your dive guide in the experience, and I'm taking you through different places. We overlay CGI on the 360 video to give kind of infographics and little animations. And of course, in the headset, the turtle looks much closer to you and like it's coming towards you. We also use it as an opportunity to teach about different methods that scientists use to monitor coral reefs. And so the Quadrat, if you notice the zeros and ones floating up, that's one way to describe what we're doing. Also, we have a number of narrators on the piece, including I think maybe 4 or 5 coral reef scientists, including from the California Academy of Sciences, myself, and also the late amazing Ruth Gates, who lent her incredible voice and spirit to the piece, and it's dedicated to her as well. And then of course the magic. We have the human connection. We got to work with this incredible organization called Heirs to our Oceans, which is all about young people becoming advocates for ocean health. And they have a chapter in Palau, and so one of the young Palauan ocean advocates was also a narrator and talked about how important the ocean is to her and to her family. So as I mentioned, this was made up of video-based CGI. Can anyone think about what the limitations, video-based 360? Can anyone think about what the limitations are for 360 video? What could you do in that first experience that I showed that you can't do in this? You can move through it. So in 360 video, it's what we call 3 degrees of freedom, where you can do, roll, kip, and yaw, right? You can do these movements, but you can't actually move through because you're basically, on train tracks. You can only see what the camera saw. Whereas when you add CGI and you create a whole virtual environment, you can actually move through, and you add the forward and back and up and down to that 3 degrees of freedom to get 6. And so what's the direction that we're going with this is not only are we integrating CGI, we're integrating CGI. So there's a scene, for instance, that shows coral spawning, which was something that I studied when I was doing my PhD, which is not something that's easy to collect footage of in the wild because it's so small, and I mean the gametes are small, it's in the dark, and so CGI was a really great way to show this incredible natural phenomenon. And we also are interested in adding interactive elements, and so through game engines. So we got a grant from Epic Games to use their Unreal Engine to add more interactive elements, because it's that agency and that presence that is sort of the secret sauce of VR. And so we're hoping to take it a step further into that. And our goal with this film is to take 1 million people on a virtual dive. We launched it last month at the International Ocean Film Festival at Port Mason, and since then we've probably had like a couple thousand join it. But that's from going to places like this, going to schools, going to film festivals. But that's not the scale that we want, and so we're going to be putting it on online platforms like the Oculus Store as well as Viveport, in the hopes that we can get it to as many people as possible. We also hope to export a monoscopic version so that it can be played on other 360 platforms like YouTube or Facebook. So our plan for distribution is events, film festivals, those online platforms I mentioned, and classrooms. And through National Geographic, we had a grant to develop ocean education kits so that the VR doesn't just stand on its own. You actually have supplementary materials and activities to incorporate into weeks-long curriculum, basically targeted towards middle school. And I have some of the 3D printed corals here that actually change color in warm water to try to visualize what bleaching is. And they each have their own bleaching threshold as well. So depending on what temperature, they go. And also next week, I am going to be at National Geographic headquarters giving a presentation to their new VR auditorium. So each seat will have its own VR headset. So it'll be a mass virtual dive, which I'm really excited about. So the technology is coming really fast. When we first started this project, we were developing it for, and this was 2 years ago, we were developing it for like the bigger, more expensive headsets that cost $500 or $600, and they have to be tethered to a computer that is multi-$1,000 because it needs to have a really sophisticated graphics card to be able to play VR, and you have to have base stations around the room to like track where you're going. And during that time, I think it was only been a year since these Oculus Go's came out, and they're $200. They hold many gigabytes. They can also connect to Wi-Fi. And so, I mean, it's just getting more and more affordable and more accessible and just better quality. So that's really exciting. Also next week, I'm going to be taking it to EarthX in Texas. We also, a few days ago, got some cool coverage through the HP magazine about VR. Our project, as well as many others who are looking into how these experiences can, make that abstract concept of climate change a little bit more accessible. We also got a recognition for Bay Area News, and this ridiculous story in Forbes. That title is problematic on so many levels. And then, of course, Manta Ray Eden next week at National Geographic, and I pointed out that I don't know that much about manta rays, but they're like, you'll be fine, and so I'm asked a few experts to help me with that one. And here are some photos of our wonderful 3D models that we're hoping to develop and replicate and distribute. If we're looking for that big grant so that we can create tons of these and just give them away. We've been testing them in middle schools and high school classrooms, and it's pretty fantastic. Kids really seem to take to it. If you haven't seen the film yet, there's also a scene where kids are are playing with it and have a pretty cool reaction to it. Here's some events. We got the president of Palau, Tommy Ramangasau, trying it out. We have Sylvia Earle. We have at National Geographic earlier, at Autodesk, some kids at the Tech Museum in San Jose for the Youth Climate Action Summit. And as I mentioned, there are all these activities and supplemental things, including a workbook that we call their dive log. And one of my favorite things are the sort of before and afters. So before they try the experience and go through all these activities, they write about what they think about the ocean. And usually it's things like the ocean is really mysterious, it's really big and dark and empty and scary, and I'm so afraid of sharks. Like, so many kids are afraid of sharks. And then afterwards, they'll say things like, it felt like you were actually there. What caught my attention were the raised mouth. They start asking really great questions, like I wonder if a coral is living or a plant, which will be covered in the curriculum after they see the VR. So this is their response to just the VR. And they were amazed by how real it felt to them. And then they say things, so write 2 paragraphs about your current thoughts and feelings about the ocean. And we have things like, I feel like the ocean is the most beautiful thing on earth. It's full of life, and we need the ocean to survive. And then if you scroll down, my feelings about the ocean have grown so much since I saw all of its beauties. I feel like the ocean is one of the many jewels on earth. Or I feel like the ocean is incredible. I feel sad or bad for people who don't know what the ocean is. And so, I mean, this is pretty fun, wonderful, qualitative data, right? And this one was pretty great. I showed this one when I presented at Mbari. The ocean is a mysterious, dangerous, new place to explore. We should try to get to the bottom to see what is down there. I feel it has many, many, many more species than we think. So, we're trying to foster the spirit of exploration and discovery, and I think that this is really exciting, that we can use these tools to try to, foster that. So, we only just finished the prototype of our kits, and we only just finished our film. So we're looking to distribute as widely as possible. We're hoping to fundraise again so we can make many more of these kits, give them away for free. We also want to measure the impact. So I'm working with Jeremy Bailenson at the Virtual Human Interaction Lab at Stanford and some of his lab to really research these effects. And I have all these intuitive ideas and qualitative observations, but I really want to measure what the effects really are. Maybe it's good at generating excitement to go diving, but is it good at generating desire to pass effective climate legislation? So I'm interested in those nuances and how we can improve it. And yeah, we're also thinking about developing more experiences like this. So maybe our next version will be on kelp forests of California. Maybe we'll do something to explore Monterey Canyon. So if anyone has any ideas or sources of funding, please come talk to me. And ultimately just want to connect more and more people to the ocean, because marine scientists like us in the room are just so lucky, and one of my greatest desires in life is just to share the ocean with as many people as possible. Thank you. Are there any questions? I'm also excited to get the rest of you who haven't seen it yet into the headsets. Yes?
Is most of this work just focusing on underwater stuff? Like, do you do any kind of like drone mapping of coastlines to show possible like rise and fall of sea levels in 3D?
So first of all, we really wanted to get drone footage in 360, but we couldn't afford it. We tried like basically rigging a really small 360 camera to our Phantom, our DJI Phantom, and it just was swaying and it just didn't work. So if we wanted a real VR drone, we just couldn't afford it. But something that the Hydrous has done is we've created 3D models using aerial photogrammetry of islands in the Maldives. So we're hoping when we go back, we can kind of continue some aerial surveys, maybe to help visualize the effects of sea level rise. And it's not done incredibly scientifically. We can base it on the data that we do have of sea level rise, but I think the visualizations are also really powerful. But that is a great idea. And the film itself, it's only about 9 minutes long. The general rule of thumb for VR is not to put people in for much longer than 10 minutes, just because that's how it is. There's also some complaints of people feeling disoriented far past that. And so it's a really short piece, and there's we structured it kind of like a dive profile. So instead of the terrestrial-centric story arc, we want it to be more like you immerse yourself, and you descend, and you explore, and then you ascend at the end with the message of hope, and then emerge with like a new idea of what you can do in your life. But we also added kind of another quick ascent in there because part of the film is actually above water footage in Palau, where you kind of go and see the traditional bays, the meeting houses, and you hear from some of the kids there. So some of it is land, but it's mainly underwater.
So you have this 9-minute video, but can you talk about how many hours and how much work actually goes?
You've been talking to Jason. Yes. So Jason is the reason that this all worked. He's the one who worked with Lenovo to get this going. But the footage every minute was 50 gigabytes. And we left the island with 28 terabytes of footage. And each day, I got to go to sleep, and poor Jason had to take out and also we didn't have a backup camera. And so, because there was only one of them in the world. And whenever it would mess up, we lost a lot of footage because it overheated and things. But anyway, Jason would have to take out the cards manually, and he stayed up all night because it took 14 hours or something ridiculous like that to transfer the footage to the giant RAID that we had to back it up. So I am extremely grateful that I didn't know how it worked going into this project, or I wouldn't have tried, and very grateful for people like Jason and VR filmmakers that I worked with who really understand the complexities of this medium. It's also really time-consuming and expensive to process the footage. So, you have, let me go to the next slide. You have all these different cameras, and the cameras aren't built for this rig. The cameras are Blackmagic cameras that you buy separately, and so they're not really synced to each other. And so afterwards, you have to do all the stitching manually. And you get a lot of artifacts where there's sort of shadows and ghosts, and sometimes the mantas, they're terrible actors. They would come too close, and that way there would just be doubling of the mantas. So we have so much manta footage, but not that much of it is clean, I should say. And so it was really challenging technically. So again, I felt like I was Mr. Magoo walking onto a construction site, just happily going along while someone else helped behind the scenes. Yeah, so I had the easy job. I just had to swim around and get filmed. But yeah, it was a big undertaking, cost a lot more than we thought it would cost. But I hope that the impact is worth it. Any other questions? Cool.
Okay, well, let's thank Erika one more time.